toward the late middle toward the end of the book, and so just want to review the things we've had. The initial proverbs, which worked very well for beginners. I've sort of consolidated the proverbs. Michi's are on my left here, and then I've sort of consolidated them into the 8 on the right, and I've broken it into 2 point subjects, kind of general proverbs and then splitting rules. And so what I've suggested you do is you go, as in your opening rolls, you go through all the proverbs to find the best move. If anything's not obviously you make a 5-point with 3-1, etc. But consult the proverbs to figure out what to do, and then whenever you have the opportunity to split, you should consult the splitting rules and see if you're violating one of those. And generally these work. Sometimes they're not easy, and sometimes they're contradictory, and that makes it a little bit more difficult. But generally, I think they're pretty good. So then we've gotten into Michi's intermediate session, and we've discussed intermediate section where we've discussed, and really some of these I put as addended more to beginning. To making a point is better than hitting loose. Counting the advanced anchor with an advanced anchor, those are part of the rules. I don't see them as being much more difficult necessarily. But now we've gotten into some kind of miscellaneous topics where you think of slotting every time you roll an ace. We've gone over that. Make sure you can play 6, and these are kind of specific cases for things that happen. They're good to know, but they're kind of down on the list of things that you really need to know. They are more intermediate. And the farther advanced we get, the fewer applications there are, and the more kind of difficult situation we get. So now we're into the last of the intermediate proverbs, best builders on the 9-point. And this is one that we're going to talk about it, but it's really, to me, it's more a subset of the builder, the first advanced level topic, which is the builder cannot work with builder cannot work with only 1 dice. So what we're really going to be talking about here is not so much that we want to do something with our own 9-point. It's that when our opponent has the 9-point, we're going to need to look at certain things a little bit differently, and we're going to do some things that we wouldn't ordinarily do just because of the nature of the 9-point. So okay, so let me get started with that. And in Michi's book, he goes over the characteristics of each of these points, the 14-point, and actually I have to do this around, the 9-point, and he points out that the 9-point is the best. It's the best builder because almost every roll that you get, you can do something good, with the 9-point. So you can either make a point or something, but there's no real terrible rolls here. But the bad part about it is that there are a lot of return shots here if you have the 9-point. I think there are 6. I forgot to count. But as you move back to the 10-point, you have fewer opportunities to make a good point or do something constructive, but you also have fewer opportunities to get hit by black. And here on the 11-point, there are even fewer. I mean, it's good for making the bar or the 5, but that's, which can be useful, but that's about it. But there's only 1 roll, 6-4 that gets you into trouble. He mentions, but does not go into any explanation or in depth, that okay, this actually is a pretty good point to have if your opponent has a single checker back. So if your opponent got a 6-5 early, you'd kind of like to make this point, the 11-point, for containment purposes, because it blocks the 6-4 for black coming out, and then it gives full coverage, a double shot to any point in the outfield, and then also a shot at the 5-point. so that's his point. The lesson here, though, is really contained in his next chapter, the advanced chapter, which he points out that a builder, the title chapter is a builder cannot work with only one dice. And so what happens is, particularly if you have the 9-point, but in other circumstances, which we'll go more into next time, if you can't do anything constructive, it's best to kind of disrupt your opponent's rhythm. And what he's talking about was really something called the tempo hit. So we'll look at a few examples that Michi came up with. Okay, so he double twos. Now, what's well, most of the time, what's the proper roll? What's the proper move with double twos on an early roll? Oops.
Either hit or build an anchor. I mean, build a point. Make a point.
Yeah, well, it's usually 2 down, or 6-4, 13,
Yeah.
11. And that's most of the time, that's it. Sometimes, if you can hit somewhere else, if you want to slotted the 5-point, you're going to hit that. Sometimes if it's a DMP or you're in gamma and save, you want to make the 5-point so that you're not less likely to be gammon and that sort of thing. Here,
Gary,
however,
if your opponent has made the bar point, do you want to bring the 24 to 23 just so that you have an escape?
yes, well, yeah. In that case, you've got. We'll look at that before we get to this. So your opponent's made the bar point. Yeah, well, you've got the splitting rules apply here. You're well blocked. So you're going to want to move. Oh, I'm wrong. You're still not going to want to move. Well, it's closer here, though. It's about even to do that. Normally, it's a mistake not to make the bar point and which is the bar point and the 20. Here, it's basically even. So to answer your question, well, it's still no, but it's closer.
Okay, that clears everything.
Thank you.
Well, but Gary, let me just add, I mean, one thing that I thought was interesting there was you didn't want to make his 5, well, let's go to number 2, is you still want to bring 2 down and make our 4-point, but
Yeah.
you didn't want to make put an anchor on his 5-point.
Yeah, and again, it's the 4-point is such a strong point that you make the 4-point, it's a strong point, and you unstack the 6-point.
Yeah,
and those are very strong things to do. And okay, making this bar point, I mean, that used to be considered the ideal and the strongest. In fact, a friend of mine would always double whenever he made the bar point, which is that was, people believe that in the 70s and things like that. It's just not the case. So it's almost always right to make the 4-point. Now, which is where we get back to this position. And
24-16.
Yeah, it's the hit. This is the weird, a weird exception. And
That's the 9-point of your opponent.
yeah, because this is Michi's point about the best builders on the 9-point, and it's not that we're rushing to make necessarily the 9-point, because we could bring a 2 checker down here to make the 9-point or 2. That's not the option. But when your opponent has slotted the 9-point in particular, you're going to want to disrupt him in some way, and that's usually going to offset your ordinary thinking. So this is, and I wouldn't get, this is the one play where you do this. And it's very unusual. It's almost, it's kind of like you have to memorize. Your opponent opens with a 6-4, you roll double suit, you hit. That's, I think, the only one where double suits where you would do this. But look here. Okay, here, this play is moved into second, where we're still, okay, this is such a strong play that it's really, a viable play. You really have to consider it. But we're still moving the back checkers up over moving the normal play over 2 checkers down. And it's because, because this moving the back checkers up removes some of the good rolls that black would have.
So Gary, if that was double fours, how would you play that?
Okay, well, double fours. Well, let's look what double fours would do.
I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah. There are a lot of, double fours is a great roll for the second roll, but you could usually, hit. Normally the double fours is 2 up and 2 down, but in this case you can hit. So I think the right play is going to be to hit and 2 down.
And then you get your 9.2.
Yeah, and then you get the 9 point. Oh, here it's 2 down. This may be a score. This may be a score issue. Okay, yeah. This is a play that I've seen a lot. I never do this play, and I don't really know anyone who does. The two checkers up, because it's a running play, but it seems early to run, and it seems like a waste to not bring 2 checkers into the zone and to hit. But it does show up, and I never do it. And in fact, I don't know of many people who do.
It's not even an error. That's
No, it's basically the equivalent play. And in fact, when we had this, I guess the idea here is that this is it's hardly any difference at all. But I guess the idea is, let's look at the gammons. 59, 5, 5, 4, 13 gammons, 4 and 8 against, and this is 58, 6, 50. So this is a little more. So actually, you win more here, and you get fewer gammons, but you give up fewer gammons. So if you're ahead in the match, you're going to tilt very slightly to be more conservative and not give up the gammon and not give up your lead. Whereas probably, let's see, if you're behind.
So, but if you were playing that role, you would hit with a single and then bring 2 down. Is that what you do? Okay.
Yes, I would do this play. And you see, as I've changed the score a little bit, there's this very slight tilt to making the more aggressive play. Now, generally, it's most of the time you shouldn't worry too much about whether you're ahead or behind in what play that you make. There are certain circumstances when you do when a gammon is really important. Let's not get into that. But the point here was that this is the one. Go back to the original position where this is the one point where you're not going to make the 4 point, and you're not going to make either the 3 point or the 11 point. You're going to take all 4 twos and use it to hit off the 9 point. And so that that's kind of what Michi's getting at when he says the builder in the 9 point is the most powerful builder. Because you would do something like that just to prevent your opponent from taking advantage of his 9 point.
So I assume a 5-3 is the same answer.
Yeah. Well, the 5-3 is simpler because it's hit, and it's almost always, if your choice is between hitting, it's an outfield hit, and that's rule 0. That's like the first thing you do if on the second roll is it's almost always right to hit, particularly in your opponent's outfield, and certainly if your opponent has slotted 5 point or some other point. So if you can hit, you want to hit. And in this case, the 3 point, any interboard point is a good point, but it's not, it doesn't make the list of the 3 strongest points. And in this case, it's a huge blunder. Okay, but for this one, the other thing I'll add too, that when the plays we're going to look at is these are plays where, you know, you can't do something else that's all that constructive. So, you know, with a 3-1, you're still going to make your 5-point, or 4-2, you're going to make your 4-point, you know, the basic plays. And, but here, you know, you have an option. And so, you know, what do we think this is? I'll give you a hint. It's the reason we're talking about this chapter that we are.
Or bring two down.
No, it's not 2 down.
No.
You know, and again, that's a good point, because I can't emphasize, I think, that enough. When he says the 9-point is the best builder, that doesn't mean that we want to put we want to be in a rush to put our own builder at the 9-point. It's a little bit tricky way of looking, because all the other proverbs that we've looked at are things that we want to do with our checkers, places, you know, we want to unstack, we want to make this point, we want to do that, and as a secondary matter, we want to prevent our opponent from doing things, you know, fight for the good point and things like that, where we're knocking them off. But in this case, it's only because our opponent has slotted the 9-point, we do something different than we did. So we don't look to place, you know, use the 4 to go 13 to 9 because it's a great thing to do. We have to worry about our opponent being on the 9-point. And so here, this is what's called the tempo play. And you know, I have to say, this is not a great play. I mean, it's the best play, but it's not that much better than kind of the normal play, or the the running play, or even the 2 down. So I can't say that it's I think the idea of the Proverbs is a brilliant idea, and it's worked very well. But once you get into these kind of advanced topics, these are a little bit trickier, and these aren't, I guess they're not as powerful, I guess. Now, just to show you, why you would even consider this. Let's change this a little bit. Oops, looks like okay. All right, well, I'll do it anyway because I don't want to guess. Note that here's the tempo hit. When we hit off the ace, it's called a tempo hit. We don't want the ace point. In fact, when we were looking at tiger plays, that's the weak tiger. We're not doing a tiger hit because we're only hitting once. So it's a really weak point and we don't really want it, but we're just doing it to disrupt. Now, in this case, when the checker is on, black's checker is on the 14, well, at 11 instead of his 9, then then it's an error to do the tempo hit. And the normal play is right, or the running play is right too. And that just sort of shows you the fact that your opponent has something on the 9-point makes us do things a little bit differently than if he has it on the 14-point. Okay. One more of these, and Michi showed this earlier, and he showed it on the under the proverb of hit and split, and he mentioned hit and split, and then didn't do any explanation of it. But here's another instance of okay, your opponent has the 9-point. Now here there are other reasons for doing this, and Michi doesn't really talk about them either. But again, we're going to split, and we're going to do the tempo hit. Now here, there's 2 reasons for doing this. One is that your opponent has the 9-point, and so you want to disrupt it and prevent him from doing something productive there. The secondly is he has 2 blots. And if you hit him, now he can't clear up both blots. And so that's sort of that's part of the reason for doing that now. And in this case, okay, he's still got 2 blots here. And it's still right to do the tempo hit. Although again, you notice that it's right to do the tempo hit, but it's not really an error to not do it in this case. And you know, again, that's kind of the greater power of that point. Okay, so that's where I want to leave it. I don't. This isn't one of the more earth-shattering proverbs that he has, but you know, it's I do have questions of, you know, sometimes, you know, when should you do the tempo hit and that sort of thing, and you know, the answer is that there aren't very many rolls and there aren't many times that you need to do it. So anyway, we've gone over them, and next time we'll go over other circumstances in which you're disrupting your opponent's play rather than trying to do something constructive with your roll. And it means that you could do something constructive with your roll other than disrupt your opponent. So, okay, so let's get back. In Michi's book, he has a whole chapter, of going over problems to kind of integrate all the proverbs that we've learned. So, and we've been doing that, you know, piecemeal. So I want to do a few more of those today, because I think those are, you know, the strength of this book is learning those proverbs and integrating them into our play. So we've got a 3-1 to play. And what do we think, and what do we think we should do, and what are the proverbs here?
Well, you're ahead in the pip count, so you have 2 points instead of 1 point for your opponent. So if you did the 5 point, if you took the 5 point, then you'd have 3 blots. That seems pretty risky. I would do 16, 15, and 6, 3.
Okay.
I agree with that. I mean, you're well ahead in the race, so.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're bringing in things that aren't that go more toward the middle game, and things like the race is always important, and so what you're talking about is kind of the bold safe idea, or okay, we're ahead in the race, let's protect our lead. And so, but that's, but what you know, when we look at the board, what are the problems that we have that we see? You know, we have blots, but what about this?
Yeah.
That's a big stack.
How about 16, 15, and 13, 10?
Yeah. What about that one? You make a battlefield point and you unstack.
And you give yourself a builder that's
You have
not,
a builder in that 10 point. And, you know, and so what's the drawback of that? Well, you have the blot, you know,
Yeah.
10 points. So, you know, and that's, you know,
you're
that's
gonna
not
have
what
a
you want to
blot
protect your
anywhere.
lead.
You're
Sorry,
gonna
sorry.
have a blot.
What?
I don't see how you could, well,
Yeah, no, that's true. You can't safety everything, because you could go 16, 14 and stacking, 16, 13 stacking 6 checkers on the midpoint.
No, you go 16, 15, 6, 3.
Well, I know we
That's
can do that, but okay.
what does it buy you?
Well, again, you're playing safe.
Yeah, that's the argument. You're playing safe, but you know, we've got these positions. We got 4 and 5 point, which we'd really like to make.
Yeah.
And we just took a checker from our 6 to their 3, and you know, eventually we'll want to make the 2 point or the 1 point, but we don't need to now. So let's look at the answer, and we'll see why. It is this. It is safe. Making the outfield point, that's a proverb. Unstacking is also a proverb. Now it leaves the blot, but let's look at this blot. This isn't covered by the Proverbs, but let's think about it. How is he? What are we worried about this blot?
Well, probably the most likely hit will be from the 7 point, and he's got to strip. He's got to break that point, so that
That's
helps.
right. Yeah.
And he's got a blot back.
I don't know if we made this a proverb, or I don't think Michi had this a proverb. I think I stuck it in, but his proverb was avoid stacked points, and I put the corollary in. Well, if you got to leave a blot, put it in front of a strip point, because now if black wants to hit you from there, he's got to break the point. Now look also here, and this is it's a blunder not to do this, so this is kind of important. Is that okay? Black has a blot here. Okay, the best that black can do is hit and cover, in which case he's got a 2 point board and he's evened up the race a little bit, but he's left 2 blots in his outer board, a 10 and a 7. And now he's left a double shot for the 10. Okay, so there's a huge price to play for black to hit this. And if he hits it and safeties the checker in some way, he leaves this blot unattended.
Yeah.
And if you hit that one coming back, he goes way back in the race. So
what's the error rate if he goes 6-3 and 16-15?
Looks like it's pretty high.
It's huge.
yeah. Whoops. Where was it?
Down at the bottom.
Yeah, it's 36%.
Wow.
0.36. Yeah. There are a couple of principles that sort of don't make proverbs, but playing past an open space with a builder is not a good idea. The exception being if black had a board, and then if getting hit there would be catastrophic or dangerous, then you would do something like that. But you're not going to want to do that. And then this play. You've got a strip point here, which you don't have a landing point for other than the 2, and then you're stacked here. So your next row, you really are forced to move something from your midpoint. So it's really not very flexible, and it shows up. That's a big error. This play I call this checker bait, and so that doesn't quite make it. You could I guess you put out a proverb, put out bait for your opponent, make him do something that he thinks is good that is really not very good. So, so anyway.
Gary, let me ask you, if he had a better board, let's say he had a 3 point board or something like that, would that change?
Yeah. So let's see, he had, oops. Well, maybe, let's see, maybe not. I mean, we can't avoid leaving a blot here. So this may still be, okay, now, okay, well, actually we can, you're right. Now, yeah, that's a good example. Okay, now, safety is very important. This is a very strong board. And getting hit is a problem. And I was going to say, well, there's no way to safety check. Well, there was. It was, the original play. So, that's a good example of this is when you would do that play, where safety is the high.
How about if the opponent has just 2 points?
I bet we're somewhere in between. Yeah, it's still that, and it's still blunder. Let's make it the 5 point. Probably not as big a blunder. Maybe not even error. Now it's just an error. Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, we don't discuss this most in the middle game, but board strength is always important, and it's going to affect your checker play, and that's why you're trying to to strengthen your own board and get you're fighting for the strong point and fighting to get those strong points, is because your opponent, once you've made them, your opponent has to be very cautious particularly if you've made the three points. All right, let's do, we've got a couple more before we start to chouette. Okay, first thing, what should we be considering here?
Split or no split?
Yeah, very good. That's exactly right, because we're coming in off the bar and we've rolled a 1, so we can, you know, make the ace point, or we can split. And so if we're split or no split, then you want to consult the splitting rules. And so what do the splitting rules tell you?
He's got
Well,
10 then in the zone.
Yeah, he's got 10 checkers in the zone, and what's this? It's a stack here. That's the blitzing structure. So that's it. So that's a big no-no to split. Actually, oh. So yeah, that should tell us, okay, we should not split. Now what do we do with the 2?
Bring one down from the 13.
Yeah, we could do that. You're unstacking there. Okay, I don't want to spend time, but that it's that, or you even in this case, playing safely is not that bad. Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't right. Oh, the second place, where's the safe play? No. Okay, I must have misremembered it or something like that. But okay, so anyway, or it made a different score or something. But here, the key thing to get the play right, and it's not, okay, these aren't big errors, because this is, while this is, you know, the blitzing structure, it's not the great structure, because of the 2 blots and so on. But, you know, to get the play right, you have to consult the splitting rules. And then that tells you, okay, you shouldn't split. And then what do you do with the 2? Oh, I think maybe if this one, if black had split here, I may have been thinking of that. Yeah. Oh, no, it's still right. Okay. Well, I don't remember what I was thinking of. In any case, yeah, don't split because of the splitting rules. And then the best 2, okay, well, you're bringing 2 down. Now you've got a chance to make something constructive next time. And you're not going to get attacked, at least from that side of the board.
Gary, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
I understand this completely, but sometimes when I use the proverb not to split against a blitzing structure that's much more scary than the one here, XG, or when I'm on backgammon Galaxy, it says it's an error when I make a more conservative play, but they say it's an error. What do you think?
Usually there's something else going on that you're not seeing. So what I'd suggest you do is, if you can, and back to anyone, because these are tricky, if you want to send in plays, send them to me or Karen, and Karen will forward to me, and we'll go over them. And
Okay.
you know, that's a good way to learn, is that, you know, and you know, these proverbs will serve you well, you know, 95% of the time, if you interpret them correctly. And if you thought you followed the proverb and you got it wrong, it's either because you missed something or the proverb just didn't work. And
Yeah, well, that's what I thought, but I mean, it happens a lot, so it's
Okay.
yeah. Thank you, though. Yes, absolutely.
Well, send it in and we'll go over it. I mean, you know, there are, you know, these are pretty accurate for the most part, but you know, there are exceptions. So. You know,
Yes, Gary, the other point is Galaxy isn't a very high level of XG analysis. So these are small differences.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And since Galaxy is doing a lower level of XG to get speed, get a quick quick analysis.
Yeah,
Maybe it didn't hold up. So that's a great offer to send you positions that seem to go against the proverbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. And, that's part of the beauty of this book is there are all these positions, and they're, obviously they're selected because they have good explanations attached to them, but they don't always, it's not always easy to see that the proverb working. And I found the same thing. The splitting rules are very good, but there's always one or two that, doesn't quite make sense. And even this one, this is not a great error to not make the split, or to not split here. And it's
And Gary, the other one was I was just thinking about was, while it's not a great anchor, but make the anchor on the 23. At least you're one off the 24, and you're getting closer.
Yeah, and that's not terrible either. I don't really like making the 2 point early on, because it's really not, later on, if black has made another point, then, maybe that's your best shot. But, black is a long way from threatening you very severely here. So, and even, here, even not making the point, but stepping up to the 3 point is better than making the 2 point. So,
Okay.
I would not make the 2 point unless I'm really getting a lot of pressure, and I've got, certainly more than 1 point that I'm up against.
Isn't another reason for not making that 2 point is that then you can't use your sixes, double sixes?
Yeah. That's one of the things too. Is it from a defensive point of view, the checker on the ace point is a pretty good place to put a checker, because it covers all the infield. Your opponent can't dump any checkers behind you if he needs to, and then you can get out with a 6. If you make the 2 point, and you eventually you'll have to get out if you want to win the game, but you can only get out with a 5 point, or with a 5, assuming that your opponent hasn't made his bar point. And so, the advantage of the 2 point anchor is not that much.
The other way, the way that I often look at it too is, if you form the 2 point, you've now given your opponent 2 points of a 6 point prime in front of you. If you're on the 1 point, he's only got 1 point of a 6 point prime made.
Yeah.
So just another way to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, there's no. Don't rush. Don't rush to make the 2 point. Is, I guess, is the bottom line. Now, it is true that if you've gotten hammered, that having the 2 point anchor is better than having the ace point anchor, but neither one of them is a very good game to play. So, okay, let's do one more, and then we'll go to the Chouette.
That seems like a pretty easy one.
Good. What is it? What is it then?
Oh, I see the problem.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So make your 5 point.
Well, what are the options here? I mean, yeah, we can make the 5 point. That's always, you always have to consider that when that's available to you. What's the other option? What was the one that you first saw, Charlie?
13, 9, 24, 21.
Yeah, so you could make, or you could make the defensive 4 point and the 9 point.
Making 2 points is better than 1.
Plus you've got an anchor, an advanced anchor,
Yeah.
unstacked your midpoint a little bit.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
put it
but-
up there. Yeah. Generally, the 5 point is the strong point, and you better be doing a lot of good things if you're not going to make the strong point. But we've got we've got some reasons here. Now, Michi never talks about, actively making an anchor. He's only talked about, if your opponent has the advanced anchor, then you need the advanced anchor. But here, we're going to make it proactively. And, but look at your opponent's position. Black has 10 checkers, in the zone, bearing down with us. Now he's have a stack on his 6 point. If you make that anchor, the only useful place for these checkers to go is the 5 point. So more than likely he's going to dump them behind you, which means that they're not really in the game. More importantly, though, is that with all these checkers, this is a blitzing structure. You make the anchor and the blitz is over. There's no blitz. You don't want to be blitzed. And if you can avoid giving your opponent the opportunity, you want to avoid doing that, because the blitz usually means that you get gammoned. Okay, but here was an example. Again, it's 5 point is better than the 4 point, other things being equal. Here, other things were not equal. We've got the blitzing structure here, and then we've got a blot, we can make a point. And there's always value to making that point. So here it's overwhelming. It's a blunder to make the 5 point in this case, and it's rarely a blunder to make your 5 point. But here's an example of that. Okay, so we'll go ahead. Anyone else? All right, so it's 8:45. Let's leave it at that. And next week we'll get on to the advanced stuff. And do send in anytime, send anything that you think violates the Proverbs, or you tried to apply the Proverbs and you didn't do it, it didn't work. And let's go over it and see what the issue is. It could be the Proverbs are wrong. They're Proverbs. They're not etched in stone. But okay. So anyone want to stay around for the Chouette?
I'm gonna have to bail.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to leave also. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.